reporting any crime, it follows the same process initially. So if you're reporting, let's say you were assaulted, someone yelled at you something that was hateful while they were assaulting you, we would consider this a hate crime, and you wanted to report this to police. You could call 911 if it's, if your life's at risk, if it's an emergency, and probably in an assault case, I would recommend you call 911. But if there's no immediate emergency, you can also call our non-emergency line, which maybe you do if there's property damage, so if damage to your property and graffiti or damage to your car, and you believed it was because of hate towards you, you can call our non-emergency number, which is 92490-5020. So when you call to report a hate crime or a hate incident, you will be contacted, and a police officer, one of our frontline patrol officers, will connect with you, likely in person, and they will gather evidence for that offense. So if it's an assault that occurred, they will look for video, they will talk to witnesses, they will gather the evidence to prove that that crime happened. What is different with a hate crime is after that happens, you will be contacted by our hate crime investigator, Jeff Pache, and he will meet with you to go over, again, talk about the incident and what happened. His job is to really capture the elements of the offense that show that it was hateful. That it was that the crime was motivated by hate. So he can meet you in your home. He's gone to coffee with people. He's met people at temples, at churches. He's met people anywhere you feel comfortable is where he's happy to talk with you, and he will get this kind of secondary statement from you, and that is for the court process, right? What it's really important to understand, this is a barrier that comes up often, is people want to report a hate crime, but they don't necessarily want to go through the court process. So they don't want to go and testify in court, stand before a judge, have to relive what happened. And that's absolutely fine. So you can just report a hate crime if you want. As a victim here in Canada, it's up to you to decide how far you want this process to go. If you simply say, you know what, I think it's important that police know that this happened, or I want it documented, so if it happens again, there's this record of it, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. If you'd like to go through the whole process and you're happy to testify, then it can go all the way through court. But oftentimes people get put off and they get concerned if they think they have to do the whole court thing. But for these crimes, you don't have to. There are, I will say, a very small portion of crimes that you don't get a choice as a victim. We will take them all the way to the court system. And those are for very serious offenses. So ones that are life-threatening, ones that have a public risk involved, and we're fearful that if we don't put someone in jail, that this might be a significant risk to others. And domestic violence is another thing here in Nova Scotia that unfortunately there's no, if you're the victim of a domestic violence or property damage, that does go through the court systems whether or not you like it or not. So those are a very small portion of crimes though, but for the majority of cases, you as a victim, you get to choose how far you go through the process. So what happens with a hate crime is it runs exactly the same as any other crime would. So when you go to court on a hate crime, we deal with the offense that happened. So again, we go back to if it's an assault that occurred, we go through the court system and we prove that that assault happened. That's the main focus of the court process. And if someone is found guilty of that crime, then the judge goes and looks at the hate motivating factors. So that's when Jeff's piece of work comes in. And the judge then, in Canada law, the judge must consider the hate in the sentencing. So what that looks like is usually an increase in the penalty or an increase in the jail time of the person if they're convicted of the assault. And what the judge will do is they'll look at Jeff's work. They'll talk to Jeff Paches, the hate crime investigator. He'll lay out how this was motivated by hatred. And usually we also use victim impact statements. So how is this affecting the victim? How did it affect the greater community as well? And then the judge will consider increasing a sentence or penalty for that offense. That's the majority of how hate crimes work in Canada, across Canada. We get, I think this year or last year, 2024, we were up to somewhere mid 300s for hate crimes being reported. And we usually only end up with a few of those actually going to court and going through the court system. And that's for the reason what I stated before, is sometimes victims don't want to go through that process. And then oftentimes we might have a hate crime that has occurred, but we can't actually find who committed the crime, especially when we talk about property damage. So someone puts some graffiti or damages some property, sometimes those can be really hard to solve. So we may have 300 plus hate crimes actually happening that we've got stats on. We might only bring 15 to 20 to court every year because of those two factors. Does anyone have any questions on that piece? Yeah.
I was just kind of curious what exactly differentiates a hate incident from a hate crime.
Yeah.
Verbal abuse is also considered as a hate crime, or it has to be physical motivation?
No, so in Canada, there's no crime for verbal abuse. There is a crime called criminal harassment. So if someone is harassing you, yelling at you, following you down the street, making you fearful, that actually would move into a criminal offense. But someone yelling something at you isn't a crime in and of itself here in Canada. Unfortunately, I wish it was. In places like the UK, there are actual hate crimes like that. They have a place in their criminal code for that specifically. In Canada, we don't. So verbiage would just be someone yelling something at you on its own would just be a hate incident. But I like to warn people that sometimes if that prolongs or if you're made fearful, threats is a criminal charge. So if someone threatens you or threatens your life or threatens your property, we could charge them criminally with a hate motivated for that. So I